Hello everyone! Preston here with another video on my channel, Art. This time we are going to be doing Shading Tutorial for Beginners Part 2. This one's going to deal with more shapes and how to actually use the value scales from Part 1 into these shapes and values of an object. With that, we're going to just jump right into it. Before we do, remember to like, comment what you guys think of these tutorial videos, as well as what you guys think I should do next. X-nay, the stuff that will be announced at the end, and we will continue from there. And remember to subscribe. So, let's get into the video of shading objects. Now that we understand the difference between values and value scales, you have to implement that into shapes somehow. But if you look at different shapes, they're not a gradient all the time. They're not just from 0 to 9 all the time. There's depth to them. There's different things. They skip from 1 to 9 to 5 sometimes. There's a difference between that. This is when you implement the 5 different value aspects of a shape. These aspects do correlate with hard, soft, and lost edges, but the 5 elements are highlight, midtones, coarse shadows, reflective light, and cast shadows. So let me explain a little bit more about each one of these different aspects. To begin with, let's start off with highlights. Highlights are usually the brightest point of an object. Now, I'm not going to say it is going to always be the brightest value in the image, but it is the brightest value of the object where the highlight happens. This is usually, if you're doing studies, it will be on the 0 or 1, maybe 2 scale for the object. But then there's going to be going from highlights to midtones. Midtones are the gradient between the highlight and the core shadow, trying to make sure that they blend together, because this is what makes the soft edge for objects, is going from the midtone to the next brightest thing, or the darkest thing, because there's other things out there. Because shapes, again, aren't gradients. They usually go from light to dark to mid-light-ish. And that's where we go to the core shadow. Now, the core shadow is the darkest point of the object. Whether it is at the highest point, whether it's a 5 or 9, depending on how you match scales, or if it is to, an 8 or a 4, the darkest point will be the core shadow. Now, the core shadow, there's usually multiple points between the core shadow as well as the cast shadow. But before we get into the cast shadow, there's a thing that lets you form the shape a little better with the hard edges, and that's the reflective light. Now, the reflective light is all the light that is reflected from around the cast shadow or other objects nearby. This lets you show a little bit more of the area around an object and how it interacts with it. Whether it is a ball next to a light or a smaller situation where light is reflecting off of a mirror to the object, there's a multitude of ways to help that. Now, all of this is affected by different levels for the whole point of the objects that I'm drawing here. Now, with this reflective light, it's usually where you can see it is next to or near the cast shadow, or to help understand a little bit more about the object. Different ways and different environments will change how the reflective light shows, but for basic understandings, it will be near the cast shadow. Now, the cast shadow, for more intense purposes, is a gradient from dark near the object to light away from the object. Because when an object has a shadow, the shadow usually gets brighter the farther away it goes. Now, depending on the environment and the lighting of the object, or the lighting that the object is getting from the light, the gradient usually goes from the darkest value to maybe near a midtone or maybe near the lightest part. Rarely, depending on the lighting, does it go all the way bright. This is where all of your environments and understanding of what you're doing. But for basic studies, this is what it would look like for a cube, ball, cylinder, and cone. Now, with that, the differences that will help you understand a little bit more of these different core elements of valuing a shape is with the differences between a hard edge, soft edge, and a lost edge. Hard edges are a distinct edge between objects to another, whether it is the cast shadow with the reflective light or a square where it's right next to a wall where it has the darkest core values next to it. And that is a very hard edge. This right here between my chair, which is very dark, versus my shoulder, that's how you can tell what a hard edge is. You can see the shape of it. Now, a soft edge is the indication of a gradual transition of shape, value of the object. Now, the biggest difference between these two is soft edges help you see the form of the object well. So soft edges will show the gradient, while the hard edge shows the outline. Hard edges are also the implementation of cast shadows. Cast shadows are made from the light hitting from a certain point to another to make sure that it's showing the object's shadow. Shadows are a reflection of what we are getting to the ground of the light hitting us, or the light hitting a ball or another object. So it makes it a little easier for us to understand that. So cast shadows and shape objects between the two are most likely going to be a hard edge, while the form or shape of an object will be the soft edge, where you will see more of a gradient and see how something looks or is more 3D. Now, the third type of edge is a lost edge, and this is another form of a soft edge. It varies between, but it is something that makes it look like multiple objects are in one shadow or forming with the background. It's a very artistic choice between the different artists that are out there to try and implement this. And all of this helps you understand how shading works. Try practicing this with, like I did, with a cube, ball, cylinder, cone, or even try with other objects like a book, a car, and try to mimic the different shadows and values that are creating from this. Try to challenge yourself and maybe get a glass of water and try to make a reflective light implementation into the cast shadow. There's so many ways that you can practice this, and these are just the basics and for beginners. Now that we're going into this part and now we're done with understanding values and shading and how that works, let's start going into how to implement that into color as well as anatomy. So those are going to be the next parts. Thank you again so much for watching this video. This video was definitely made for beginners to understand how to value objects and shade them. Now, if you understand a little bit more about this, you can jump into my earlier tutorial on how to do specifically a metal ball to understand how to do more of those reflective things, and maybe go along with me in that one. Again, before you go, try commenting what you guys think I should work on. The next video will be about how to implement color into shading and implement that into anatomy, I hope. We'll see how much time I have into that video. But thank you again so much, and I will see you guys again next time. Bye!